Hello, and welcome to the Scriptures Are Real podcast. This is the podcast where we talk about times when the Scriptures have become real for us because we believe there's power in the Scriptures and we need to draw that power out as much as we can. I'm your co-host, Kerry and with me is my co-host, Lamar Newmeyer. Welcome, Lamar.
Hey, Kerry, good to see you again.
Good to be with you. We're hitting in the middle of, we did last week, just the very beginning of 1 Samuel. So now we're going to hit the meat of 1 Samuel. And really, we're covering a lot of material this week.
Oh, yeah.
And some of it is not covered in what they have us read. We just can't ask everyone to read everything as fast as we're going. People wouldn't be able to get it all read. But in this podcast, sometimes we'll touch on some of the things that aren't in the assigned reading, as it were. Just to try and help people connect all of the things that are going on in the Scriptures so that the reading that is assigned will make more sense. And I think in this podcast, we'll do a little bit of that. We'll cover one of the chapters that is not in the assigned reading, meaning 1 Samuel chapter 7.
Yes. Yeah.
So I know you have some experiences and some stories with that chapter. I'm going to, for our viewing audience, I'm just going to share a screen so we can put that scripture block up so we have
okay.
it.
Yeah.
But why don't you go ahead and kind of walk us through your thoughts regarding 1 Samuel 7 and whatever else.
Yeah. So it's kind of a small thing. It's a blip as far as the Scriptures go. And there isn't that much of the story about this particular experience I have, but here's what happened. So I was volunteering for the dedication and the open house of the Phoenix Temple, and I was listening to the. So they had an intro when you would come in. For those who were going through the open house, they would come in and they had "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing" playing, and that would play, and I listened to it several times because I was there for several hours, and for some reason that song just started ringing in my head, and I thought, I've heard it many times before, but it really started making an impact. Just the spirit was very strong in general in that whole experience, and it just started really ringing in there. And when the men would sing, now there's different versions of that song. The song was actually written back in the 1800s, and in fact, I have that information here. I'll get to it in a second. But in that song, they're talking about the men start to sing in the Mac Wilberg version of, if you listen to the Tabernacle Choir, they'll have that part that says, "Here I raise my Eben-ezer, hither by thy help I've come." And I'm like, I know that word Ebenezer. It's where do I know that from? It's in the Scripture somewhere. And I went and looked it up, and it comes from 2 Samuel, or from 1 Samuel, chapter 7. And as was the practice a few times, a little background here. Back in Deuteronomy, you'll see Israel did this. They would win a victory and they would raise a monument, and they'd say, "The Lord helped us in this spot." But then later, the Lord says, "Hey, knock it off. It's not the stone that's helping you. It's me that's helping you. Don't go worship the stone." But in this particular case, there's a spot where it's in a valley where Samuel has had two previous defeats, and they finally have a victory, and it's a pretty big victory. They get back the stone, or they get back the Ark of the Covenant, which has been lost for the first time in Israel's history, has been lost to another culture, another group, and they recover this, and they have an area there, and they raise it. So, Kerry, you've got it up there. They're in the children. See, so they recover it, and see,
it's verse 12.
Verse 12, yes. Then Samuel took a stone and set it between Mizpah and Shen, and called the name of it Eben-ezer, saying, "Hitherto the Lord helped us." So in the song, it says, "Here I raise my Eben-ezer, hither by thy help I've come, and I hope by thy good blessing safely to arrive at home." So for some reason at that particular time, it really hit me on that one. I'm like, there are times in your life when you just want to recognize that you've hit a milestone or you've done something good. And so I thought, how have we taken that time to say, hey, I've come a long way. I was back there a while ago and now I'm here. And that doesn't mean we're not going to fall and we're going to do some things, but we've done some good things here, and I like where I'm at. So I like that. I like that imagery. But even more than that, I really liked in this whole I'm trying to find my note here. In that one, it says here the imagery that he comes up with and let me give you some background on the minister. The hymn was written by Robert Robinson. He was a Baptist minister, and it was actually written in 1757. So it's a way long time ago. That's an official term, way long time ago.
Yeah.
And I like this later on. He talks about in this song. He said he's throughout the chorus. He says, "Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave thy court above." So the idea in the song is he keeps leaving the Lord. He keeps departing. He keeps messing up. He sins. He falls away. But the Lord brings him back, keeps bringing him back. And that's the idea that we see here through these trials that Israel goes through. They win a good victory. The Lord blesses them. They have a great harvest. They're safe for a period of time, and then they fall away and they fall after idols. And they have this reoccurring cycle, and we see this in the Book of Mormon as well, the Nephites and the Lamanites. And you think, can't these guys get it straight? I mean, but then I think, well, we're reading about hundreds of years here. How many times do we not get it straight?
Yeah.
So that was kind of the idea that I had, and I really connected with that song, and it made me think. It gave me a whole nother facet to 1 Samuel chapter 7, and I'm like, oh, a very small little passage about the Eben-ezer, but I'm like, that why did this pastor Robert Robinson put this in there? Why did he say, "Here I raise my Eben-ezer, hitherby I overcome"? What's the imagery he's evoking in our mind right there? What do you think about that, Kerry? You have any ideas on?
Yeah, I think I mean, this is maybe worth exploring a little bit of two bits of history here, because we've got, as you said, the history of stones being raised to remember something. So, and we even had, you and I mentioned this once before when we were doing Joshua, and that they raised stones up as they went through the River Jordan. And we said that might even be the first Eben-ezer. And we had one of our really thoughtful audience members leave a comment saying, well, what about some of these earlier things that happened, even Adam or Jacob? So, and that's a good point. I mean, Adam made an altar, and then I guess in a way that could be considered an Eben-ezer. And,
sure, right.
And Jacob made an altar commemorating what God had done for him when he had his vision there. And so in a way that could be an Eben-ezer, but
sure.
But really, what an Eben-ezer seems to be. So literally the word comes from Evan, which is stone, and Ezer, which is help. So a stone of helping. Right. And it's just a stone to help you remember that God has helped you. And as you said, we've seen it in Deuteronomy. We saw it in Joshua. My guess is there were plenty of times before that just didn't make it into the scriptures. But none of them are given that name. They kind of serve that function. But I love this one here. It's certainly in Deuteronomy and definitely in Joshua. They are built to commemorate a time where God helped them. But I love this one here because you're at an interesting stage in Israel's development. You've gone through the period of Judges where they're really kind of not doing well much of the time. And this is towards the end of that stage. Samuel is the last judge. So they're still in the period of Judges. It will be the next chapter where they'll ask for a king. But Samuel, they're still in that period of Judges. And just before this is when they've had this kind of low point where they almost destroyed the tribe of Benjamin. It says that every man does that which is right in his own eyes. And then Samuel comes, and he's really trying to get them to repent. Just before Samuel, you've had Eli and his sons who haven't been doing well. That's why they lost the ark, because, right. Well, Eli's doing well, other than not reprimanding his sons. There's a lot I like about Eli, but his sons really aren't doing well. And so they've got some bad leaders that Israel is following, and that's why they lost the ark. And then just before this, you have the story of the miraculous return of the ark. And then you have, and it's at the loss of the ark that Eli and his sons die, and his daughter-in-law who is giving birth, and so on. So, I mean, that whole line is gone. And Samuel becomes the judge, and they have a righteous judge who is also a prophet who judges all of Israel, and that's unusual. And so they're really, and you'll note in this one, if it's 1 Samuel chapter 7, and I think this is really worth looking at. Samuel spake unto all the house of Israel, saying, if you do return unto the Lord with all your hearts, then put away the strange gods and Ashtaroth from among you, and prepare your hearts unto the Lord, and serve him only, and he will deliver you out of the hand of the Philistines. So this has to do with what you were talking about.
Right.
The quick turn to idolatry. They're worshiping Jehovah and these other gods. That's a topic I suspect we'll talk about 100 times during the Old Testament, because it's a repeated theme. But they're doing that, and you see they listen to Samuel. Verse 4: the children of Israel did put away the Baalim and Ashtaroth and serve the Lord only. And then Samuel's going to gather Israel and pray, and they gather together, and then they go to battle against the Philistines. And look at verse 8. And the children of Israel said to Samuel, cease not to cry unto the Lord our God for us, that he will save us out of the hands of the Philistines. Look how fully they are turning to God. And so Samuel takes a young lamb and offers it for a burnt offering, and the Lord hears him. And then the Philistines draw near to battle, and the Lord thundered with a great thunder on that day upon the Philistines and discomfited them, and they were smitten before Israel. So that's the reason they are setting up this Eben-ezer, because they have come, they had a righteous leader. They listened to the righteous leader. They honestly repented. They honestly knew they needed to rely on God and not themselves. They turned to God, they made sacrifice, and God helped them. And now they want to remember that God helped them. And this goes back to that Deuteronomy idea again, that we have to remember what God is doing for us. And that's the point of the Eben-ezer, is to help us remember. Now, as you said, all too often, these stones will become an idol in and of themselves. These things that start out as a good thing become a bad thing. And that's another topic worth exploring. But all too often that happens. But the good thing is, if we have something that helps us remember what God has done for us, that's one of the, in both Deuteronomy and in the Book of Mormon, it is one of the greatest themes. I'd say it's the third most common, if you're just going to go numerically times it's brought up. I haven't done a statistical analysis of this, but I think it's the third most common theme in the Book of Mormon, is just remember. Yeah. And you may remember President Kimball once gave a talk where he said, do you know what the most important word is in the English language? If you were to look it up, it might be the word remember.
Yes, I remember that.
He said, that's good. You remember that he said remember.
I remember that he said that. Yeah. That's true. And I think that this is, again, going back to the hymn here, this is what I think he's getting at, that we're remembering these times. And that's why I just love this whole song. And it brought this whole thing to light. I thought, I can really relate with these people from Israel who struggle with their own demons, and they fall away and they come back. But at this point, they're really strong. And that's why here in the song, it says, here I raise my Eben-ezer. So this is his battle. And I wrote it I wrote a little devotional on this, and this is what I wrote in a kind of a journal devotional. I did it for a devotional and on my journal. And so I said, I have a thought that he's saying, that this pastor's saying, this is my life struggle, my Eben-ezer, my Gethsemane. This can be the scene of my defeats, or it can ultimately become the scene of my overcoming if I struggle and persevere. So that's what I love about the song, is that even though Israel falls away and that we fall away, if we still get up and we recognize, hey, we're still in the fight. We're doing good here. This is going to be our next challenge. Or this is a place that we've come this far. Hither by thy help I've come this far, and thou hast helped me. So I like that.
That's profound. And maybe, if it's all right, I don't think we'd plan on doing this, but maybe we can take this to the next kind of step and see how Israel kind of loses that a little bit. because I'm with you. This is such a poignant moment for Israel. To me, it's so touching that after the depths they've sunk to, Samuel gets them to come to this place where God is delivering them. So he's doing what Samson failed to do.
Right.
He is delivering them from the Philistines, and they're really getting close to this, so that they pursue the Philistines, and they're slain, and the cities of the Philistines were restored to Israel, even from Ekron to Gath, and so on. So they're really making progress here because they have this righteous judge. But then the next thing that happens is that they gather together. They come to Samuel. So Samuel's getting old, and his sons are not doing well. And it never talks about whether he removes them or not, but I'm going to assume he removes them from their priestly offices, just because this seems to be the kind of guy that Samuel is. And he's not, excuse me, he's not given the kind of punishment or consequences that Eli did. So I assume he removed them, but it doesn't tell us. But then we get verse 5, and they said unto him, behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations.
Right.
And later on, they will say that they want a king to lead them in battle, like all of the other nations have. So you see, it's so ironic that this is just after, and it's clear a number of years have gone past. Maybe even half a generation or kind of a generation or something, and Samuel's now much older. But that Eben-ezer, which is supposed to remind them of what God has done for them, they're now at the point where they're saying, no, we need a king to do it for us. We want a king to lead us in our battle. Everyone else has one. Everybody else does it, right? I hear this from my kids all the time. Everybody else has one. Everybody else does it. We need a king to lead us in battle, forgetting how well it worked when it was God that led them in battle under Samuel. We're not under Samuel, under God, but they were under Samuel. And so they've forgotten, and this will lead to much of their undoing. And so it's just such a stark contrast to me that they've raised this Eben-ezer, how God has helped them, and they've already forgotten that it was God who helped them.
That's so true. And I was in a Sunday school class just this last Sunday with I was sitting in for somebody. I'm in the Sunday school right now, and I sat in this class, and they were talking about these idols and how we fell into idol worship. And I said, why do they keep doing this? What's so attractive about idols? What's so attractive about a stone or a golden statue? What's so attractive about that? And we talked about it a little, like, do we have these things today? Do we have idols today? And these kids are sharp. I mean, we had anywhere from 14 to 17 years old in there, and they were sharp. They were right on it. They're like, oh yeah, we have, and they named certain people that could be idols. Okay, yeah, you could have a movie star or a YouTube star. Who's that? What about cars and money? Do we find ourselves putting these idols? These are idols. Yeah. Same thing as just same thing. It's the world around us, the Canaanites around us have all these things. You should have this car. You should have this watch or this ring or this that, or you should have your hair this way, or you should wear this. You should call yourself this. And it's no different today and this isn't about a podcast, and I'm not throwing any political, this is about as political as I'll become on this podcast. But do we look for today for politicians to tell us what to do? Let's get one politician to tell us what to do. I'm like, no, you go to the PTA meeting, you go to the city council meeting, you go do these things. Stop waiting for some politician in whatever level to tell you what to do. We're going to get the smartest and the best and the greatest. No, that's your job. You teach your children. Don't wait for them to do it. Get involved in the school board. Do those things. That's I find ourselves electing kings all over. We have presidents and I'm just trying to draw a blank on other world leaders, not ministers.
Prime ministers.
Prime ministers, what I'm saying. Yeah, prime ministers. Yeah. Why is it that they have to come up with all your ideas for you? Yeah. How are they going to govern over hundreds of millions of people? Use your own mind. Be good of your own accord. Choose yourself to do these good things. And that's what makes a good nation, is when the individuals choose their path and they are righteous people or support good principle. It's not the valiant leader or the great, even though we're going to see Saul come up and he's heads heads and shoulders above everybody else. And he's a great military leader, but they're gonna have a problem with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so important. And you're right. One of the themes that we will come back to again and again is the effects of following a righteous leader or a wicked leader. That's one of the major themes of the rest of the Old Testament here, is that Israel continually follows. When they get a wicked leader, they follow him into wickedness, and when they get a righteous leader, they follow him into righteousness. And I'm glad they follow a righteous leader into righteousness, but the problem is how easily swayed they are.
Right.
And so choosing our leaders carefully, and I don't mean just political leaders, but although that's part of it, but thought leaders, these influencers online, Hollywood figures, and
right,
who sing, and philosophers and writers, and political thinkers, the ivory tower, whatever else. We'll go through this again and again, but we allow people to influence our thoughts so much. And again, it so often comes down to, we want to be like all the rest of the world.
Yeah, it's very attractive. The world's very attractive. There's neat cars and neat things to have, and you could look like this, and you could be that. And
yeah, or these days it might be, fame is a huge idol, partially because we can all be so close. Like we're maybe just one of just the right kind of Instagram post away from millions of people liking us. Right. I had this experience with one of my daughters. She was 18, and she just likes to get on and post like really silly things on Instagram. She does it all the time, and does similar things all the time. And one of these same kinds of things that she did a whole bunch of times suddenly got 2 million hits.
Wow.
Like in one day, just boom, like for no reason. It wasn't different than what she'd done before or after, but somehow that one caught on, right? It's just so fickle, but it's what we worship in some ways. And
exactly right.
And so let's look again at how this works out in this story. When they come to Samuel and they say they want a king, Samuel told all the words of the people, or words of the Lord unto the people, meaning that God had said to them, well, let's do that. The thing displeased Samuel. We're in chapter 8, verse 6. The thing displeased Samuel when they said, give us a king. And Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said unto Samuel, hearken unto the voice of the people and all that they say unto thee, for they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me. That's one thing we have to remember when, for example, the prophet gives us counsel, and we decide we like what the world says better than what the prophet says. And I should say prophets, seers, and revelators. So better than what any of those 15 people say. We like what the world says. Then we're not rejecting President Nelson, President Oaks, Elder Bednar, or anyone else. We're rejecting God, right? It's not that we didn't like Elder Hollenstock. We rejected God. And we're asking God to not reign over us. So he basically says, well, if that's what they want, give it to them, but it's not going to work well. And so Samuel tells the people that, and he goes through this long list in verses 11 through 18. He tells them all the things that are going to happen when they have a king. They're going to take your sons and daughters and to be in their military and to cook for them. And they're going to take your food and your land and so on, until one day you'll cry out. And we won't go through it here. I'll put a link in the show notes if I can remember. I've got a little chart I made of where you can take each one of these and see it fulfilled in the next generation and a half.
Oh, that'd be great.
And so I'll put a link for that on there. But everything Samuel says comes true. There's a good lesson that prophets seem to actually know what they're talking about. Let's look at their response. Nevertheless, so this is in verse 19, nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, nay, but we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. Again, you see, we want to be like everyone else. We're not looking to be a peculiar people. We're not looking to be a holy or a different or a set apart people. We're so persuaded by the world that we want to be like them. And that's, turns out, we're going to see it doesn't work very well for them as we go through the story of Saul. We'll see that. But I think today, most of the people that I know in the church that are having struggles with following the prophet, or having kind of faith trials or spiritual struggles, most of the time it's because they've been so influenced by the ideas of the world and what the world is teaching them and telling them is right. And I tell you, it's a confusing time, especially our youth and our young single adults. They are so confused because the world is so persuasive, and they hear the world so much that they have a hard time rejecting the world and following God. And they want to be like the world, and the world has become the king over them. And they want to be like them and not a peculiar or a holy people, and follow and listen to a prophet. And the scriptures, the Old Testament, is going to give us 1,000 examples of why that's a bad idea. And I just hope we can help everyone, but especially our youth and our young adults, see
Oh yeah.
that the world is becoming a tyrant in their lives and leading them to captivity rather than to freedom, just the way Samuel has described here.
Yeah, you're so right. And it's interesting the way the world does this. The world does it by playing on the good intentions of people. People want to be nice, people want to be inclusive, people want to be that, all great things, until they add that one little extra. But now you have to do this, or you have to do that, or you can't do this, or
Yeah.
they take the good intentions of people, and then they just twist it a little bit, and then you're like, wait, we're no longer in good principle anymore. This isn't good principle. This is what I feel is right, or what the crowd feels. I'm going to follow the crowd.
Yeah.
It is very confusing. I don't know how to navigate all this. I've got children of my own, and it's a so far so good, but it's a struggle sometimes.
Oh yeah. It's funny, as an adult, you look back at yourself when you were a teenager or in high school, and maybe there are a couple of people who it's not this way, but I think most people can look back and say, there were a lot of things I was really worried about fitting in.
Yeah.
That in the end, it was just stupid, right? Did I have the right kind of clothes? Did
Right.
I do my hair the right kind of way?
Right.
What if everyone else was doing this with their ear, this with their hair, or this with the coloring of their hair, or tattoos or fake tattoos, or what, and
Yeah.
how do I fit in if I'm not doing that? And you look back now and you think, what in the world? How was I so silly? But it's such a big deal at the time.
Right.
And a lot of those are small things. So you colored your hair blue, I don't know, whatever. I mean, that's not a big thing. It could speak some underlying big things in it, and it could not, right? That's
Right.
not a big thing. But some of the silliness of it can translate into being so influenced by the world that then when these ideas come, you're just as influenced, and the ideas of the world have a much bigger influence on who you are and on what you do and what you become. And that's what we have to be really careful of, is how influenced we are by the ideas of the world. And so hopefully we can learn lessons from the silly little things that I have so when I was growing up, did you have Ocean Pacific shorts or not? Right. These kinds of things.
OP shorts.
Yeah. OP. That's
the
exactly
Town and
right.
Country shirts. There's OP shorts,
Yeah.
Town and Country shirts, the Vans. I know.
Yeah. And Vans. Yeah. That's exactly
right. I
right.
have a Vans, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look back now, I think, why did I ever even care? I don't know what was wrong with me. And I didn't care as much as some people, but I still cared. I was like, oh, look, that person, everyone likes how he looks. I better look that way. Right. And that's a small thing, but hopefully I can take that lesson and say, okay, now I'm worried everybody likes how that person thinks, and the world really ostracizes you if you don't think that way. And in the end, it's still like, okay, are you wearing OP shorts or not? Right. That's what it still is. But it's hard to see while you're in the middle of it. And that's what happened to Israel.
Right. And let me throw a little bit of hope into this whole mix. The class we had, again, it was a couple classes combined because we had some teachers out. And so it was 14 through 16 or 14 through 17. And I said, well, what's the difference? Is it bad to have a nice car? I mean, is that a bad thing to have a nice car? Is it bad to have a nice watch or to dress nicely? I mean, the scriptures talk about being neat and comely, right? Is it a bad thing? And one of the other things I mentioned as an idol was, worshiping your body, like when you working out to the point where that's all you do. Well, my wife's a fitness instructor. She spends at least 4 hours a day working out in some respect. So I'm like, well, is that a bad thing? And my daughter is in this class, right? She's like, well, my mom's a fitness instructor. She works out all the time. Like, so that's a great point. Where does it become the difference between having something nice and it becoming an idol? And I think the key to look for is, and the kids identified it. I put the word on it, but they identified it. Well, it's when you are trying to be better than someone else. Yeah, when you're trying to be, the difference is pride. It is pride, and that's what President Benson talked about. Many other the other authorities and things have talked about the dangers of pride in our lives. When it becomes more about the thing than about what the thing represents. It's great to have a nice car. I like to have a nice car to that doesn't break down and looks good and keep it clean and whatever. That's great. Okay, not a problem with that. It's not a bad thing to have a nice house, invite people over, and a warm and inviting, welcoming place. That's not a bad thing. But when it becomes the point of where you have to have that car or the OP shorts because you have to fit in with that. The OP short, I had a great pair of corduroy OP shorts. They were great. They lasted for a long time. But it's when those shorts or the Vans or whatever, when you look down on someone else for not having those, now you've crossed over. Now you've gone from it being a good tool or a neat and comely appearance. When the pride is added to it, now it's become an idol. Again, this Eben-ezer is in Deuteronomy. It's a monument. But when the people come back and start worshiping the monument, no, you messed it all up.
Yeah. And if we were going to take President Benson's talk on pride and remember, one of his emphases there was that sometimes it's the pride of those who don't have, aspiring for about those who do have, right? And so we could turn that around. Are you looking down on yourself because you don't have OP shorts?
Right.
In which case, again, it has become an idol, or the world is influencing you too much. And maybe I'll just share the respect I have for one person, and in a way, this is an Eben-ezer for her. And I won't mention a name, and I hope if she's listening, she'll probably recognize that I'm talking about her. I hope she'll forgive me. But a woman that I know that I respect a tremendous amount. She's older than I am, and came from a kind of normal, humble background. But ended up, she and her husband and some people they were involved with ended up with very successful business. And when they sold it, it was for millions and millions. And, they've got plenty of money and could buy all sorts of stuff. But she told us once that just to make sure she doesn't get caught up in any of that, she makes sure she buys all of her pants from Walmart.
Perfect.
Just as a way of reminding herself that this kind of thing is not important. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with buying your pants from Walmart. I buy mine from wherever I can find the cheapest stuff. But
sure.
But that's a kind of an Eben-ezer for her, right? This is how she reminds herself, I'm not going to get caught up in the stuff the world tells me is important. I'm not going to get worried about that. I'm going to keep God first in my life. And so that's just one little thing she's done. So we can all find our own little Eben-ezers to help us not get caught up in the ways of the world.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's great. And let me finish this out. By the end of this hymn that we were talking about, "Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing," in verse 4 it says, "Oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I am constrained to be. Let thy goodness, like a fetter, bring my wandering heart to thee." Now, a fetter is like a handcuff. It's a chain. It's a bond.
Yeah. And the ankles are the hands. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Ankles, hands, whatever. So it's a fetter. And I thought this was interesting. The fact that he uses something of seems like oppressive. Is it oppressive?
Yeah, it binds you to
fetter.
something, right?
And you want to be, but you're bound, right?
Yeah.
So let thy goodness, like a fetter, bind my wandering heart to thee. So what excellent imagery is in this song, because he's not looking for oppression. He's not looking to be bound. He's looking to be bonded, held tight, held fast with God. Don't let me wander away. Bring me back. And then the next part of that, this is still verse 4. "Prone to wander, Lord, I feel it. Prone to leave the God I love." So there you go. So he knows his tendency to get away. Don't let me get away. Bind me with something strong, something tight. Here's my heart. Oh, take and seal it for thy courts above. So interesting imagery, I thought, in this whole thing. Don't let me get away, bind me, hold me fast, and so I think about this sometimes. I tell them when I teach seminary or Sunday school or whatever, I'll say to them, are the gospel rules, are the things we go by, the word of wisdom, for instance, are these restrictive things? Yeah, they are restrictive. Do they hold you back with some things? Yeah, sometimes. Are you better off without him? Probably, definitely you are.
Yeah.
You know, so this is the interesting thing. This is a in the hymn and also in our lives. This is a point where it's not someone else oppressing you. It's not the Lord telling you you can't do this. This is a voluntary thing that we are entering into. Hey, I want you to bind me so that I don't get off the track. If I wander, bring me back. Hold me, get that, bring that chain around.
Yeah.
Bring me
Yeah.
back to thee. So that's
That's
a
beautiful
voluntary thing. That's
stuff.
something that we want. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'd say we're all prone to wander. That's a description of all of us. There's a natural man inside all of us. We're all prone to wander. And then what was it? Tell me if I'm remembering this right. You've got the lyrics in front of you. But it was his goodness that was supposed to be the fetter and bind. God's goodness was supposed to bind us to God. Is that what it was? That would be the fetter?
Oh, how great, oh, to grace, how great a debtor daily I'm constrained to be. Let thy goodness, like a fetter,
Yeah.
bind thy wandering heart. Let your grace bind me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And his God's goodness. So we're all prone to wander. We're all fallen beings, and we're all prone to wander, but it is remembering the goodness of God. The tender mercies is another way of saying it. How God has helped us. Right. But that's what should bind us to God, is remembering what God has done and can do for us should bind us to him. And then we remember that by having these different Eben-ezers in our life, whether that's writing a journal. And President Eyring has suggested we write down the little miracles in our lives to help us remember God's goodness, whether that be we commemorate, we have a picture of the temple to remember what God has done for us in making those ordinances possible, whatever. And it should be multiple things that we do to help us remember God's goodness. That's that goodness, or that help, that ezer, right?
Yeah.
Should bind us to God so that we don't wander, because we are prone to wander.
Agreed. That's why the song has become one of my very favorite. I play it all the time. My kids, I know I have it on repeat sometimes. Like, what's wrong with that guy? I'll listen to that song. I don't know. That's not all I listen to. But anyway, that's why this song became so impactful to me. Being there at that temple dedication, and I'm like, I'm going to look into that song. And I saw this whole thing and wrote this devotional / journal entry about it. And I thought, man, this is really something that I'm going to remember in my life. It's my just like Robert, what's his name? Robert Robinson, just like him. And here I raised my Eben-ezer. I'm like, okay, these are times I'm recognize what I'm doing. That Lord has brought me this far, and hold tight.
That's good. Well, thank you, Lamar. We hope that others are inspired to avoid the world and remember God's goodness, and draw power from these stories. We have got lots more to talk about as we go through the First and 2nd Samuel and First and 2nd Kings. We're in a fast forward motion for the next while in Come Follow Me. We cover a lot of material quickly, but I think this has been a good one. I hope it's been helpful for people.
Excellent. Me too. I hope that made some difference to somebody somewhere.
All right. Well, have a good day, and let people know about the good things that are happening in your life.
I'm going to go put a stone in my front yard right now.
Perfect.